Okay, I am aware that you've taken in a lot of information. I think it's absolutely fascinating when you listen to Jane talk about the process from that of an individual child and family, and then listen to Joanna and Nigel talk about the process from a strategic overview about how the system works. We are going to, there you go, you can now see the panel in all its glory. We have a second round of questions before lunch. Same rules apply as before. Put your hand up if you want to ask a question. Tell us who you are, and please keep your question short. Tamara and Jessie have got roving mics, and as there is a gentleman right at the back, Tamara, Jess, somebody going to make you run there, and the lady, Jess, you go there. And the lady in green, while you've got the mic in your hand, why don't you ask us your question, and then the gentleman at the back will come to you.
Wendy Cliff Sendy asks, what can be done to challenge local authorities who are conflating the request for an education, health and care needs assessment of the plan by requesting extensive assessment evidence before agreeing to assess? Because losing the tribunals isn't stopping them.
Okay, hold on, Jane. Question at the back, please, gentlemen. Tell us who you are.
Hi there, I'm Phil Stock and I'm from Barnet Education and Skills. The question is in the same bracket. Since the reforms, I've worked alongside 3 local authorities, all having different criteria or threshold for assessing, making decisions around assessment. I think that's highlighted that one authority was 0.8% of children with plans to another authority 0.3%. The specific question is, the SEN Code of Practice sort of states that when authorities are making decisions whether to assess or not, they should consider whether educational settings are taking relevant and purposeful action. And how does that apply to the legal test, and can that be part of a sort of decision-making process?
Jane, I think these are all for you.
Okay, interesting. This is a real hot topic for us at the tribunal, and it's prevalent. What I would say, a couple of things. First of all, when you're looking at the law, you look at the Act, you look at the regulations, and the Code of Practice is statutory guidance that contains the law, but isn't the law in itself. And the law is very clear about what the test is for statutory assessment. And it's been an age-old problem that there's always been a conflation in some local authorities between dealing with a request for statutory assessment and then making that different from the next test on, which is the request for the decision whether you're going to issue an EHC or plan or not. They're very, very different. One is a low test. The first one is a low test because that's the trigger for you to go and get evidence. And if any of you have seen me speak before, the law doesn't require you to get an EP report. It doesn't require you to be 2 years behind or spend £6,000 or whatever it is. These are often policies that are put in by a local authority. Now, why that happens is entirely up to speculation and for you to know and need to not speculate publicly about. But obviously, when you come to the tribunal, the only decision we can be making is one based on the law. Now, if you think about the whole process, this process requires you to make a decision not actually in relation to the actual setting that the child or young person is in at that time. You're not looking at what is happening. You are looking at what's happening in that school, but the decision is slightly one step removed, if you understand what I mean. So the test we're looking is exactly that test. Do they have or maybe have SEN? And usually, by the time children have come as far as requesting EHC assessment, they've been identified as in the past being in School Action Plus, now being on SEN support. So that's a tick before you've even started. It's whether they've got SEN, and that's already been identified. The next one is they may need, and it's may not must, they may need an EHC plan. And so the argument for wanting an EHC plan or needing one is often around we don't know what all their needs are yet. We haven't got a clear picture of what their needs are, and so therefore if you do an assessment, it may be we have the evidence to say, actually no, these needs can be met within the school resources. It may be that the school, especially if the school is supporting the request from the parent or even making the request themselves, are saying, we already know that we think this child does need an EHC plan. You know, we're already of that view. So in fact, it's not even may need an EHC plan as far as they're concerned, it's will need an EHC plan. But then it's for the local authority to investigate and do that. So the code of practice is relevant, but the test we're actually applying is the test that is actually in the law. The law top trumps all. So it will top trump the code of practice if it's in the Act or in the regulations. It will always top trump what's in the code of practice. I don't know what should happen. I do have ideas, obviously, but you know, so often what I see is local authorities saying no, no, no to statutory assessment, but by doing that, they've already carried out the statutory assessment. They almost should be at the next stage, which is saying, based on this evidence, we think this child doesn't need an EHC plan. Because actually that's really the decision they're trying to argue in front of us, and they've already got the evidence that they need, that they would have had to get through an EHC assessment. And in the time that they've spent saying no and defending the decision, it's cost them an awful lot more to say no than it has to actually get on and do it and say, actually we've got the evidence now, we don't need to have an EHC plan. And that decision is a different decision, but that is strengthened if you've got a strong local offer. I think it's got, oh, it's there. Strong local offer that says what you expect to be provided in schools in your area. Everybody's clear. There's SEN information reports on schools' websites to say what they do and they don't do. So it's a matter of working it through, understanding what test is being applied at what stage, and actually what evidence you've got. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, Jane. Okay, I'm going to go on to a couple more questions. Kate, you can ask one in a minute. Anybody else? Oh, right. There are 3 around this corner. Tomorrow, if you give one to Kate, lady in the white. And Jess, you've got 2 on the front row. Okay, Kate, do you want to give us your question? Tell us who you are.
Hello, I'm Kate Williams. I'm from NAS, the National Association of Special Schools. Thank you for both presentations, really useful. And what I'm thinking about is how we as people working in the sector can take learning from the tribunal pilot and from the assessments that have already been done of local areas to start making the changes that we all want to see on the ground for people and families. And specifically, Jane, I was interested that so many of the cases that have come as pilots have been around residential special schools, and what your learning is that you could share with us about how we can prevent some of those families needing to come to the training. Question.
Okay, I'm going to take the next 2 questions and then the panel can answer all 3. Lady up here, can you tell us who you are, please?
Hello, I'm Anne Humphreys from Suffolk Parent Carer Network. I just wanted to ask about the accountability that local authorities and health providers have in terms of getting information out about the inspection to parents. We were obviously recently inspected, and one of the challenges was that the local authority didn't let all parents know, and in fact were actively telling some post-16 providers that they didn't need to tell parents because it was nothing to do with them.
Okay, last question.
Hello, Romany from Parent Care Forum, Richmond and Kingston. Simple question actually. The reports that Ofsted publish, and you're talking about communicating with children, young people and how better, do you publish your reports and your written statements of action in an accessible form? Is there a requirement to do that? Because that follow-up of communication increases future participation, in my view.
Okay, thank you. Joanna and Nigel, do you want to start off on this and then Jane can prepare us?
I'm hoping this is working. Can you hear me at the back? Yeah, fantastic. First question, if I may, just can I pick up on the principles about contacting parents? It's in the handbook. Don't ask me what page it's on, but I know it's there because I wrote it. About the local area is required to tell parents and carers of children and young people right across 0 to 25 settings about the inspection. And that includes any child that is placed out of area as well. How local areas do that can be through website, can be through National Parent Carer Forum, and this is exactly comes back to the point I made earlier about we're hearing different stories about how effectively that's working and how it's not working. Just so that you are aware, we do provide local area nominated officers with 4 different types of letters to send out to a range of settings. So one of those letters, for example, is if we've decided to visit one of your settings, it's a letter to parents and carers of the setting we're visiting. By contrast, we also produce a letter for local areas to send out to all parents and carers right across the settings that we may not be visiting. So one would hope that through a range of those mechanisms that parents and carers are notified. I'm very keen to hear from you as the end user about what we can do next to support that, but it is very clear in the handbook about that. And I think also in terms of engagement, we've had quite a lot of feedback from parents. We have a parent forum group with our engagement team that review all kinds of inspection reports. And we don't at the moment publish in different forms, and I absolutely take that on board. But we do listen to the panel, and we also have a children's panel and a young people's panel that review our reports with us. So in terms of next steps, really good point. That's something that we've been talking about as well, isn't it? And also with Gareth from the DFE. So let's look at what we can do next. Absolutely. I think that's really important. And I think the colleague, Kate, it was Kate, wasn't it, about residential special schools, lessons learned. I hope that whatever you take from any inspection report you read starts the dialogue going about actually across those 20 areas, what is it, if we've mentioned something about residential special schools, that you can take then into, I think your title today was Opportunity and Challenge, wasn't it? And I think that's really at the heart of what an inspection is about. So what message do you take from that about the next opportunity? Less resource, but what's the opportunity? How can we think differently? How can we innovate differently? But what are the challenges? Nigel? Sure.
Okay, Jade.
Okay. So Kate's point about learning. One of the biggest things for learning is about the role of social care and education, or the SEN team within our local authority to work together. It's become very obvious that actually, as far as things like residential school placements are concerned, that there's been limited, if not no, conversation in some of these cases. And in fact, one side's gone, oh, it's not us, it's you. And the other side's gone, no, it's you, it's us. And actually, we have to make a decision based on the educational evidence. But it may well be that a child or young person needs a residential placement on a combination of reasons, for educational reasons, but also for other social care reasons. And not completing a social care assessment of the family or the child or the young person as required under the social care legislation doesn't mean to say you're avoiding it. It doesn't make it any better. And I think where we've been most shocked is where we've had cases come in front of us where it's obvious that it may not be just wholly about education, but there's a whole raft of other issues, you know, maybe child protection issues, maybe other social care issues, maybe wider issues with the family, which have not been acknowledged by the education team, or the social care team haven't acknowledged either, because they've got themselves into a war between them about who's going to pay. And ultimately, it's the local authority's money. Ultimately, it's the taxpayers' money that's given to the government, that's given to the local authority. But that's very interesting learning. So if there was one thing that I think the pilot has been doing, it's bringing those two agencies together and making them have a joint discussion, as opposed to reflecting previous practice, which is everybody talks about it separately and goes, it's not me, it's not me, it's not me. Yeah?
Okay, and it's a good opportunity actually. Stuart alluded this morning to the fact that we were about to announce a further review into the outcomes and opportunities and circumstances. I can't remember the title.
Experience now.
Oh, well done. I went completely blank. Into the experience and outcomes of children who use a range of residential specialist provision. That review is now live. It was posted on gov.uk this morning. That was Make It Real. And what we will give you all today is a letter that explains that in some more detail, with a call for evidence date attached. and we'd be really, really pleased. This isn't an attack on residential services. It's about looking at the most complex children, some of the children who, as Jane described, get on the war zone between costs, and actually ensuring that children who are placed in residential services are supported to have the very best quality of outcomes. And we've had lots of conversations with Kate lately about what does excellence look like from a residential school point of view. So what we're looking at is excellence, what we're looking at is achievements. It's you are the first audience that knows this review exists. So we would like you very much to take advantage of it. We will give you details later.